To spring seed or not to spring seed? That seems to be the question. Right now, especially this year after the very bad season and fall that we had last year in 2018, we're getting a very high number of clients that are wanting to explore the option of seeding in the spring in addition to the regular yearly fall seeding schedule. When we talk about seeding for fescue lawns, we have to keep in mind the kind of grass that we're putting down in the first place. Fescue is a cool season grass. This means that it thrives in cooler conditions and really struggles in the heat of the summer. This is a huge part of why we do aeration and seeding in the fall for fescue lawns. Not only does fescue turf itself do best in cooler weather, the seed germinates better in cooler weather as well. The greatest benefit to seeding in the fall, and the reason that we do aeration seeding at this point, is because of the amount of time that you have from fall coming into summer. You have all of the fall for the seed to germinate, you have all of the winter for it to start developing a stable root system, and then you have all of the spring for the plant to harden up and get ready for those summer temperatures. Fall is clearly the ideal time to put down fescue seed, but it's not the only time that you can do it. Spring is still an option. Air temperatures and soil temperatures for a window of time during the spring, usually in March, are going to be able to successfully support germination just like in the fall. However, there's a lot more risk factors because of the very short window of time that you have between a spring seeding and when things get too uncomfortably hot for fescue in the summer. So what I'm going to do with you guys is we're going to go through kind of a pros and cons list of what conditions are going to make spring seeding more complicated, and maybe that'll give you a clue into whether or not spring seeding is going to be the right option for you. So let's get the bad out of the way first and go through the cons list now. Like we just talked about, spring seeding has a few drawbacks, especially because of the shortened window of time that you have between the seed being put down in the spring and it getting hot in the summer. The biggest con is going to be the risk of failure that comes with spring seeding. Because that baby grass has only a couple of months to really develop and take off before it gets put under summer stress, statistically, we see a lot more dying off and struggling of spring seeded lawns during the summer than we do of ones that were successfully seeded in the fall. Our second con is going to be the need for homeowner involvement. If we seed in the fall and you water it like you're supposed to and it comes in and it grows and it does its thing, it's pretty much a standard routine system of how much interaction a homeowner has to have with their lawn. If we seed in the spring, it's a lot more involvement because the watering system involved is going to be more aggressive. The best way to ensure that your newly seeded spring baby grass doesn't die off in the summer is to keep it cool and keep it hydrated. This can be tricky if we end up having a season that has episodes of drought and water restrictions. Either way, the best way to ensure that success is to have a very vigorous watering schedule for several months following the seeding instead of just a month or two like in the fall. Con 3. And another big drawback is doing a spring seeding greatly restricts and limits the types and amounts of weed control that can be put down on the lawn at the same time. As we've learned from our spring weed control video that you can check out up here, a really important thing to be doing in the spring is weed control. It's when you put down your pre-emergent weed control that controls things like crabgrass, and the majority of your post-emergent weed control is put down to take care of and eliminate the winter and fall weeds that have come up since your fall aeration and seeding. To avoid compromising the already risky germination of a spring seeding, we do not put down pre-emergent weed control, and we greatly restrict the amount of post-emergent weed control to give that seed its best shot possible at quickly developing and establishing healthily. As a result, if you seed your lawn in the spring and follow the appropriate weed control patterns, you're going to see more weeds than normal during the summer, even with that increased population of fescue. So we know about the bad things, let's talk about the good things. The big pro to doing a spring seeding is that it greatly hastens the chance of you establishing an attractive, healthy lawn during the summer instead of having to wait a whole other season until that fall seeding. This is the driving motivator for a lot of homeowners that experienced a bad season the previous year. Last year, we had record-breaking rains and as a result, incredibly high rates of fungus. A lot of people lost a substantial portion of their lawn during the summer and even at the beginning of fall. And as a result, the amount of thin and bare areas in the lawns that had to be recovered with a fall seeding haven't completely bounced back because we ended up having 3 hurricanes come through that compromised the success of the fall seeding. So when we have a lawn that has been compromised by poor success the previous year, or has been crowded out by some of the Poa annua or Poa trivialis that we talked about in this video up here, or is just not as thick and hardy as we want it to be because it's still getting established and it's a relatively new property to begin with, no matter the reason, a spring seeding is going to be a quicker way to get a thicker lawn going so long as it can be kept healthy. So with all of that in mind, how do you know if spring seeding is going to be the right option for you? If you remember from fall aeration and seeding, it's a pretty expensive service. It's likely going to be several $100s for the average homeowner, and you don't want to throw your good money away on something that has very, very limited chances of success. At the end of the day, it just depends on what your personal priorities and budget are. If you do not want to see any weeds and you want your weed control to be at its greatest rates possible, spring seeding probably isn't the best option for you. That being said, if you have a property that is fairly well shaded, and if you're going to be able to successfully and thoroughly keep the seed and the baby grass watered during the spring and summer, you have less risk of the weed control being reduced, having a negative impact. The biggest compromising factor of not being able to put down pre-emergent weed control due to spring seeding is the risk of crabgrass developing during the summer, because that's the main thing that pre-emergent is targeting in addition to a few other broadleaf weeds. However, crabgrass and some of those broadleaf weeds are really, really happy in high sun and drier areas. So if you're keeping your yard watered and if you have shade that's unideal for crabgrass, you're probably not going to see as many of these weeds breaking through as somebody with a more open lawn who also didn't do pre-emergent weed control this year. If you already have a fairly thick and robust lawn, don't worry about spring seeding. I know there are a lot of YouTubers out there that act like seed is just falling from the sky and they make it rain seed and they say throw it down as heavy as you want. That's not realistic. That's not how it actually works. Seed is expensive, and making a lawn that is too thick is actually going to smother out that grass. It's going to end up competing with itself, and you're going to have higher rates of fungus and dying off parts of your lawn. You don't want that. If you already have a thick enough and well enough established lawn, don't worry about spring seeding, just wait until the fall. If you don't have an in-ground irrigation system that you can commit to running regularly, or if you don't have the setup and ability to move an above-ground hose and sprinkler system across the lawn to be able to water appropriately, spring seeding isn't going to be the right choice for you. Fescue is unhappy as an adult during the summer. Baby fescue is not going to have a shot in the dark at actually being successful if it's not able to be watered properly. And even then, no provider is really able to guarantee that you're going to get as good of germination or that it's going to stay alive as well as it would be able to after a fall seeding. Now, don't get me wrong, I have plenty of clients that I work with at Picture Perfect who we are in the process of getting them set up for a spring seeding and even a spring aeration and seeding. We've gone through the pros and cons list and we've decided that they have a much better shot at being happy with their lawn if they have tried to establish something during the spring instead of having to just look at a lot of bare and thin areas for the rest of this season. And that's great. That's the goal. At the end of the day, you need to be happy with your lawn and we need to explore all of those options. I just always want people to know all of the pros and cons of it to make sure that they're not only prepared for what they may or may not be getting, but also can make an educated decision with something that is at the end of the day a financial investment. So let me know what you think below. Have you ever done a spring seeding for your lawn, and what kind of results did you have? Be sure as well to check out our round 1 fertilizer video up there. That's going to go into everything that we're doing during this time of year anyway for a standard program separate from spring seeding. If you're a Picture Perfect client and you're interested in exploring spring seeding options because everything from last year still has your yard hurting going into this spring, let me know. Now is the perfect time to be getting set up for that, as we ideally like to have the service done in early to mid-March. I and Brandon, the head of our fertilizer division, are more than happy to answer any questions that you have about it, take a look at your lawn, and let you know honestly if we think it's a good idea for you based on those pros and cons. So be sure to reach out, because I want to make sure that you're going to be going into spring with as successful of a lawn as possible. As always, I appreciate your time and attention. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned for more videos coming up. We're about to be doing a Valentine's Day special about what we at Picture Perfect love for our lawns, and I hope that you have a Picture Perfect day.